Rugby World Rankings, folks, for the week of the 10th of July. First round of the Rugby Championship is done. How have the Rugby World Rankings been affected? Well, not a heck of a lot, to be honest. New Zealand's closed the gap on France. That's about the sum total of things. But there's also been some under-20s games, some Pacific Fours, and we'll see the permutations for this second coming round, which sees South Africa coming over here to NZ, which is kind of a clash of the Titans matchup. But yeah, Ireland and France still number 1 and 2, having not played. Surprise, surprise, their rankings have not changed on the Rugby World Rankings. However, New Zealand, with their win in Argentina, did manage to take a little bit of pointage away from Argentina. They were on 88.98, and now they're up to 89.69. So yes, a slight increase, not quite a full point, but the gap between them and the French is closed. Whereas South Africa, with their win over the Aussies, which was even by a bigger margin, was worth nada in terms of the Rugby World Rankings. Now, if you guys can remember all the way back to when Wales toured South Africa, or was that last year, you'll remember the reason why. The reason why is you can't take points off teams who you are more than 10 points ahead of. You'll see South Africa's on 88.97, Australia's on 81.80, which is not quite 10 points, but they score the home team at a kind of +3. So South Africa, for the points purposes, was actually on 91.97. So South Africa, despite the big old win, get no reward in the Rugby World Rankings. So yes, they are stable. Scotland, England, Australia, and then Argentina make up the top 8. Argentina have dropped slightly closer to Wales, but it's really interesting to see there's just like a huge gap between 5th and 4th. Like 82.77 Scotland and 88.97 South Africa. There's just a big gap between the top 4 and everybody else. And then there is kind of a wee gap between Argentina and Wales, but nothing that one kind of big win or big loss wouldn't necessarily get rid of. The rest of the board, Wales, Japan. Japan was in action with their Japan 15 in a non-test match against an All Blacks 15, which the Japanese also got kind of pretty handily beaten in. Georgia, Samoa, Fiji, Italy, Tonga, and Portugal rounding out the top kind of 16, which fits on the old whiteboard. In terms of permutations for this coming round of the Rugby Championship, a lot can happen. Australia, if they can get a win over Argentina, and the margin is not going to matter, they can pass England. So despite this kind of disheartening loss against the Box where, let's face it, they didn't really do very well, they could still get a kind of nice feel-good march up the Rugby World Rankings with a win. However, if they lose to Michael Cheika's Pumas, the Pumas will pass them. So that would be, I guess, kind of even more disheartening. And the Pumas, if they get like a 16-point win, because 16 points is the margin that the Rugby World Rankings count. It's either 1 to 15 or 16 plus. Everything else doesn't really matter. If Argentina was to win in Australia by 16 points or more, they would even go past England. So it would be a massive result for them. For the All Blacks, if they beat South Africa, they can go to 90.32, which would just be ever so slightly behind France. And if they manage to beat South Africa by 16 or more, they would pass France. So would Fozzie's kind of New Zealand media pressure be slightly lessened if they pass the French? You would think so, but it's going to take a big old win, and the Springboks have already named their squad. It looks pretty beefy if you look at the bench. South Africa, they can certainly pass New Zealand if they win. And just like the Argentinians, if they get a 16-point win, they can pass 2 teams. They would pass both the All Blacks and the French. So, yeah, not a heck of a lot in the way of movements from the first round, but there's going to be movements no matter what happens in round 2. Elsewhere in the women's, the Pacific Fours, the Black Ferns smashed Canada 52-21, and the Aussies smashed the USA 58-17. The Black Ferns will take on the USA, and the Australians will take on Canada next. Australians-Canada is probably the game to watch from that round, because I imagine the Black Ferns will probably win relatively comfortably, seeing as the USA have lost both theirs and the Ferns have won both theirs. And under 20s, Ireland and France. those are your two teams to make the final of that competition, and both teams have looked pretty good. It's pretty encouraging for the future, isn't it, that you see like who's the 1 and 2 teams in the world? It's Ireland and France for the senior men's, and then who's the 2 teams in the final for the under-20s? It's bloody Ireland and France, isn't it? So, yeah. Other games that are on, Tonga will be taking on Australia A in Tonga as well. They don't usually play many games, home games, the Tongans, so that'll be an interesting one in terms of their Rugby World Cup warm-up. And then the Japan proper team, the test team, is going to take on the All Blacks 15 again, although the Japanese 15, which took on the All Blacks 15 in the first game last week, was largely a Japanese-capped international side, but it's going to be a Japanese team proper in a non-test match against the All Blacks 15 as well. So there's still plenty of rugby going on, although the game of the week has to be All Blacks hosting South Africa out Mount Smart. If you are looking for something to kill a bit of time between now and then, check out 2 Cents on Tour. I was in China back in April and I went to a bunch of places, including a beer museum. What's the one drink do you think I struggled to get at a beer museum? They offered me bloody tea. They looked at me kind of incredulously when I asked for a beer. Check it out. Up in the cards or down in the description. I'd appreciate it. But, yeah. You guys let us know your thoughts on the World Rankings. How do you see the results going this weekend? And, yes, I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.